Question 1. Operational review demonstrates that an applicant for the Ghifari University's undergraduate program has submitted academic transcripts that appear to contain discrepancies when cross-referenced with their stated grade point average on the application form. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee to ensure regulatory compliance and uphold academic integrity? Option A. Initiate a formal process to verify the submitted transcripts, request clarification from the applicant regarding the discrepancies, and review any provided explanations before making a final admission decision. Option B. Immediately reject the applicant's application due to the apparent discrepancy. Option C. Proceed with admitting the applicant based on their self-reported grade point average without further investigation. Option D. Share the applicant's transcript information with other universities to seek their opinion on the validity of the documents. The correct answer is B. Immediately reject the applicant's application due to the apparent discrepancy. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between an applicant's stated qualifications and the university's admission standards, particularly concerning academic integrity and the accurate representation of credentials. University must uphold its commitment to fair and transparent admissions processes while ensuring that admitted students meet the required academic benchmarks. Misrepresenting qualifications can undermine the integrity of the entire student body and the university's reputation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough verification of the applicant's academic records and a direct, professional inquiry with the applicant regarding any discrepancies. This aligns with the Ghifari University's commitment to academic integrity and fair admissions, as outlined in its internal regulations and general principles of educational governance. By seeking clarification and verifying information, the university demonstrates due diligence and adherence to its own established procedures for assessing applicant suitability. This approach prioritizes accuracy and fairness, ensuring that admission decisions are based on substantiated qualifications. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that immediately rejects the applicant based solely on the initial discrepancy without further investigation, fails to provide the applicant with an opportunity to explain or rectify potential misunderstandings. This could be seen as an arbitrary decision and may violate principles of procedural fairness if the university's guidelines mandate a process of inquiry before final rejection. An approach that accepts the applicant's self-reported qualifications without any verification process would be a significant breach of academic integrity and the university's admission policies. This would undermine the credibility of the admissions process and could lead to the enrollment of unqualified students, potentially impacting the academic environment and the university's standing. An approach that involves sharing the applicant's personal academic information with other institutions or individuals without explicit consent or a legitimate need to know would violate privacy regulations and ethical standards concerning the handling of sensitive applicant data. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions should adopt a systematic and evidence-based approach. This involves 1. Clearly understanding and adhering to the university's admission policies and procedures. 2. Conducting thorough verification of all submitted documents and information. 3. Maintaining open and professional communication with applicants, providing opportunities for clarification and explanation. 4. Documenting all steps taken and decisions made throughout the admissions process. 5. Escalating complex or sensitive cases to appropriate internal committees or senior staff for review and decision. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates a discrepancy between the academic transcripts submitted by an applicant for the Ghifari University Law Program and the information provided by the applicant's previous institution regarding their final grades. The admissions committee is under pressure to meet enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Ghifari University Admissions Committee? Option A. Immediately reject the application due to the suspected misrepresentation of academic records. Option B. Proceed with admitting the applicant to meet enrollment targets, assuming the discrepancy is a minor administrative error. Option C. Conduct a thorough, objective investigation into the discrepancy, gathering all relevant documentation and providing the applicant an opportunity to respond before making a final decision. Option D. Immediately seek external legal counsel to advise on the potential implications of the discrepancy without conducting an internal review. The correct answer is A. Immediately reject the application due to the suspected misrepresentation of academic records. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student applications. The admissions committee faces pressure to meet enrollment targets while upholding the fairness and validity of the selection process. Misjudging the appropriate response could lead to accusations of bias, unfairness, or a compromised admission standard, all of which can damage the university's reputation and legal standing. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective investigation into the alleged discrepancy. This aligns with the principles of due process and fairness expected in academic institutions. Specifically, it requires gathering all relevant documentation, interviewing the applicant and any involved staff, and comparing the submitted information against established university admission criteria and policies. This systematic approach ensures that any decision made is based on factual evidence and adherence to Ghifari University's stated admission regulations, thereby upholding academic integrity and fairness. Incorrect approaches analysis. Failing to investigate and immediately rejecting the application without due diligence is an ethical failure. It presumes guilt without evidence and violates the principle of fairness by denying the applicant an opportunity to explain or clarify. This approach risks an arbitrary and potentially discriminatory decision, which is contrary to the spirit of fair admissions. Accepting the application without any further scrutiny, despite the observed discrepancy, is also problematic. It undermines the integrity of the admissions process by potentially overlooking a deliberate attempt to mislead or misrepresent qualifications. This approach could lead to admitting students who do not meet the required standards, thereby lowering academic quality and potentially creating future academic challenges for the student and the institution. Seeking external advice without first conducting an internal review is inefficient and bypasses the established internal procedures. While external consultation can be valuable, it should follow a preliminary internal assessment to ensure that the advice sought is relevant to the specific findings and that internal policies have been considered. This approach risks unnecessary delays and costs without a clear understanding of the internal facts. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions should adopt a structured, evidence-based approach. This involves 1. Identifying the discrepancy, 2. Initiating a formal, objective investigation, 3. Gathering and reviewing all relevant evidence, 4. Providing the applicant an opportunity to respond, 5. Making a decision based on established policies and factual findings. 6. Documenting the entire process and decision. This framework ensures fairness, transparency, and adherence to regulatory and ethical standards. Question 3. Operational review demonstrates that a candidate for the Ghifari University entrance exam has submitted a response that, while demonstrating a strong conceptual understanding of the subject matter, contains minor grammatical errors and a slight deviation from the prescribed formatting guidelines. The examination committee is deliberating on how to proceed. Option A. Approve the candidate's submission without further scrutiny, prioritizing leniency and the candidate's strong conceptual understanding over minor technicalities. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the submission against all Ghifari University entrance exam criteria, assessing the overall merit and adherence to core requirements, and make a decision based on the comprehensive findings. Option C. Immediately disqualify the candidate due to the formatting deviations. A strict adherence to all guidelines is a non-negotiable requirement of the Ghifari University entrance exam. Option D. Request the candidate to resubmit the entire examination with corrected formatting and grammar, even if the original submission met the core academic requirements. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review of the submission against all Ghifari University entrance exam criteria, assessing the overall merit and adherence to core requirements, and make a decision based on the comprehensive findings. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to fairly assess applicants. The Ghifari University entrance exam regulations are paramount and must be strictly adhered to. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying these regulations to a situation where a candidate's submission might be borderline. Careful judgment is required to avoid both undue leniency that compromises the exam's validity and undue harshness that unfairly penalizes a candidate. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of the candidate's submission against the specific criteria outlined in the Ghifari University Entrance Exam Guidelines for the relevant subject area. This approach is right because it directly aligns with the regulatory framework's emphasis on standardized assessment and fairness. The guidelines likely stipulate clear benchmarks for evaluating submissions, and adhering to these ensures that all candidates are judged on the same objective standards, upholding the integrity of the entrance examination process. This systematic evaluation prevents subjective bias and ensures that decisions are defensible under the exam's regulatory purview. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disqualifying the candidate based on a single perceived deficiency, without a comprehensive review, fails to uphold the principle of fair assessment. The Ghifari University Entrance Exam Regulations likely mandate a process for evaluating submissions, which would include considering the entirety of the work and potentially allowing for minor deviations if the core requirements are met. This approach risks violating the spirit of the regulations by being overly punitive and not allowing for a nuanced assessment. Another incorrect approach, which is to overlook the deficiency entirely to appear lenient, also fails to comply with the regulatory framework. The Ghifari University Entrance Exam Guidelines are designed to ensure a certain standard of academic preparedness. Ignoring a clear deficiency, even with good intentions, undermines the exam's purpose and could lead to admitting students who are not adequately prepared, thereby compromising the academic standards the university aims to uphold. This approach bypasses the established assessment criteria and introduces an element of arbitrary decision-making. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific requirements and guidelines of the Ghifari University entrance exam for the relevant subject. 2. Conducting an objective and thorough review of the candidate's submission, comparing it against these established criteria. 3. Documenting the findings of the review, noting both strengths and weaknesses in relation to the guidelines. 4. Consulting with relevant academic departments or examination committees if there is ambiguity in the interpretation of the guidelines or the candidate's submission. 5. Making a decision that is consistent with the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations, prioritizing fairness, objectivity, and academic integrity. Question 4. System analysis indicates that during the Ghifari University entrance exam, an invigilator observes a candidate repeatedly looking at a small, concealed device in their lap. The invigilator suspects the candidate may be using unauthorized aids. According to the Ghifari University entrance exam's regulatory framework for examination integrity, what is the most appropriate immediate action for the invigilator to take? Option A. Approach the candidate directly and ask them to reveal the contents of their lap, potentially causing a scene. Option B. Discreetly observe the candidate further, document the specific behavior and time, and then report the suspicion to the chief invigilator or designated examination authority for further action as per university policy. Option C. Immediately confiscate the candidate's examination paper and escort them out of the examination hall to prevent further cheating. Option D. Ignore the behavior to avoid disrupting other candidates and address it after the examination is completed. Correct answer is B. Discreetly observe the candidate further, document the specific behavior and time, and then report the suspicion to the chief invigilator or designated examination authority for further action as per university policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge related to academic integrity and the proper handling of potential misconduct during a high-stakes university entrance examination. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold the integrity of the examination process with the requirement to act fairly and transparently towards candidates. The Ghifari University entrance exam regulations, as the sole governing framework, dictate the procedures for addressing suspected irregularities. A professional decision-maker must navigate these regulations precisely, avoiding assumptions or external standards. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of observation, reporting, and investigation, strictly adhering to the Ghifari University entrance exam guidelines for examination malpractice. This approach is correct because it directly implements the established procedures designed to ensure fairness and prevent undue prejudice. The regulations likely mandate that suspected cases are reported to designated invigilators or examination committees, who then follow a defined protocol for evidence gathering and candidate notification. This ensures that any action taken is based on documented evidence and follows a prescribed due process, thereby protecting the integrity of the examination and the rights of the candidate. An incorrect approach involving immediate disqualification, without following the prescribed investigation process, fails to adhere to the procedural fairness mandated by the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations. This bypasses the established steps for evidence collection and verification, potentially leading to an unjust outcome for the candidate. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the suspicious behavior due to time constraints or fear of confrontation, directly violates the duty to maintain examination integrity as outlined in the university's examination framework. This inaction allows potential malpractice to go unchecked, undermining the credibility of the entire examination. A third incorrect approach, which involves discussing the suspicion with other candidates, breaches confidentiality and could create undue anxiety or influence other participants, violating ethical conduct and examination protocols. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations. This involves 1. Observation and documentation. Carefully note the specific behavior observed and the time it occurred. 2. Reporting. Immediately report the observation to the designated authority, e.g., Chief Invigilator, as per the exam guidelines. 3. Following protocol. Allow the designated authority to initiate the investigation process as defined by the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations, which may include gathering evidence, interviewing the candidate, and making a decision based on the findings. 4. Maintaining confidentiality. Ensure that the suspected incident is discussed only with authorized personnel involved in the investigation. Question 5. Quality control measures reveal that some invigilators at Ghifari University may have deviated from the prescribed examination script during the recent entrance exam. To address this, what is the most appropriate next step to ensure compliance with the Ghifari University entrance exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Conduct a detailed review of the Ghifari University entrance exam's official examination regulations and procedural guidelines to determine if the observed deviations constitute a breach. Option B. Assume the deviations were minor and did not impact the fairness of the exam, and proceed with candidate results processing. Option C. Consult general best practices for examination administration from international educational bodies to inform corrective actions. Option D. Immediately implement mandatory retraining for all invigilators based on the observed deviations, without further investigation. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement mandatory retraining for all invigilators based on the observed deviations, without further investigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to ensuring the integrity of the Ghifari University entrance exam, specifically concerning the adherence to examination regulations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for timely feedback and process improvement with the absolute requirement of maintaining the validity and fairness of the examination for all candidates. Any deviation from established protocols, even with good intentions, can undermine the credibility of the exam and potentially lead to legal or ethical repercussions for the university. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the examination's procedural documentation and a comparison against the Ghifari University entrance exam's official regulatory framework. This systematic verification ensures that any identified discrepancies are assessed against the established rules, allowing for informed decisions on corrective action that are compliant and fair. The justification for this approach is rooted in the principle of regulatory compliance, which mandates strict adherence to the governing laws and guidelines of the Ghifari University entrance exam. This ensures that the examination process is conducted with integrity, fairness, and transparency, upholding the standards expected of an academic institution. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate feedback without verifying against the Ghifari University entrance exam's specific regulations risks implementing changes that are not permissible or that inadvertently create new compliance issues. This bypasses the essential step of regulatory assessment, potentially leading to a violation of the exam's established framework. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of resolution over thoroughness, by making assumptions about the acceptability of certain practices, fails to uphold the principle of due diligence. This can result in overlooking critical regulatory requirements or misinterpreting the intent of the Ghifari University entrance exams guidelines, thereby compromising the exam's integrity. A further incorrect approach that involves consulting external, non-specified sources for guidance on exam procedures would be a direct violation of the strict jurisdiction requirement. The Ghifari University entrance exams regulatory framework is the sole authority, and relying on external, unapproved information introduces the risk of non-compliance with the specific rules governing this particular examination. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the governing regulatory framework. When a discrepancy is identified, the first step is always to consult the official documentation of the Ghifari University entrance exam. This is followed by a comparative analysis to determine the nature and extent of the deviation. Based on this analysis, appropriate corrective actions are devised, ensuring they align with the spirit and letter of the regulations. If there is any ambiguity, seeking clarification from the designated regulatory body or legal counsel within the university's purview is essential before implementing any changes. Question 6. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new, more inclusive online application system for the Ghifari University entrance exam would significantly increase administrative costs in the short term, but is projected to attract a wider pool of qualified applicants from diverse geographical and socio-economic backgrounds. Conversely, maintaining the current paper-based system would be cheaper, but may continue to limit access for certain student demographics. Which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical principles governing the Ghifari University entrance exam? Option A. Propose a hybrid system that uses the paper-based application for local applicants and the online system for remote applicants to partially mitigate costs while attempting to address accessibility. Option B. Conduct further studies on the potential for cost reduction in the online system before making any decision, delaying implementation indefinitely. Option C. Maintain the current paper-based system to minimize immediate financial expenditure, as the cost savings are a primary consideration for resource allocation. Option D. Prioritize the implementation of the new, more inclusive online application system, recognizing that the long-term benefits of increased accessibility and fairness outweigh the immediate cost increases and are in line with the exam's commitment to equal opportunity. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the implementation of the new, more inclusive online application system, recognizing that the long-term benefits of increased accessibility and fairness outweigh the immediate cost increases and are in line with the exam's commitment to equal opportunity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the potential benefits of a new initiative against its associated costs, while strictly adhering to the Ghifari University entrance exam's regulatory framework. The challenge lies in identifying the most ethically and legally sound approach to resource allocation and program implementation, ensuring that any decision aligns with the university's stated objectives and the spirit of the entrance examination process. Careful judgment is required to avoid actions that could be perceived as unfair, discriminatory, or in violation of the exam's integrity. The correct approach involves prioritizing the enhancement of accessibility and fairness in the entrance examination process. This means that any cost-benefit analysis must explicitly consider the impact on a diverse range of prospective students, including those from disadvantaged backgrounds or with specific needs. The regulatory framework for the Ghifari University entrance exam likely emphasizes equal opportunity and merit-based selection. Therefore, investing in measures that broaden access, such as providing alternative testing formats or additional support resources, even if they incur higher initial costs, is ethically and regulatorily justified if they demonstrably improve fairness and inclusivity without compromising the academic rigor of the assessment. This aligns with the overarching goal of identifying the most capable students from all segments of society. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on minimizing immediate financial expenditure, disregarding the potential negative impact on accessibility and fairness. For instance, Opting for the cheapest available testing platform without considering its suitability for students with disabilities or those in remote areas would be a regulatory and ethical failure. This approach prioritizes cost over equity, potentially excluding qualified candidates and violating the principle of equal opportunity. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a new initiative based on anecdotal evidence or personal bias, rather than a systematic evaluation of its potential benefits and drawbacks, especially concerning its impact on the fairness of the entrance examination. This lacks the due diligence required by regulatory compliance and ethical professional conduct. Professionals tasked with such decision should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the Ghifari University entrance, exams, regulatory framework, and ethical guidelines. This framework should involve 1. Clearly defining the objectives of the initiative. 2. Identifying all potential costs and benefits, both tangible and intangible. 3. Assessing the impact on all stakeholders, particularly prospective students. 4. Evaluating options against the established regulatory and ethical standards. And 5. Selecting the option that best upholds fairness, accessibility, and the integrity of the entrance examination process, even if it involves higher initial costs. Question 7. The efficiency study reveals that certain sections of the Ghifari University entrance examination may inadvertently disadvantage candidates from specific educational backgrounds, potentially impacting the fairness of the admissions process. The university administration is keen to present a positive image of inclusivity and academic rigor. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for conducting and reporting on such studies at Ghifari University? Option A. Publicly present the full findings of the efficiency study, including the identified potential disadvantages, and outline a plan for reviewing and revising the examination to ensure greater fairness in future admission cycles. Option B. Propose minor, superficial adjustments to the examination format that do not address the core issues identified in the study, but create an appearance of responsiveness. Option C. Immediately cease all further analysis and dissemination of the efficiency study's findings to avoid any negative publicity or perception of flaws in the current examination process. Option D. Highlight only the aspects of the study that demonstrate the overall effectiveness and rigor of the entrance examination, while omitting or downplaying any findings that suggest potential bias. The correct answer is A. Publicly present the full findings of the efficiency study, including the identified potential disadvantages, and outline a plan for reviewing and revising the examination to ensure greater fairness in future admission cycles. Explanation: the scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's desire to improve its public image and the ethical obligation to accurately represent its academic standing. The entrance exam's integrity is paramount, and any manipulation, even for perceived positive outcomes, undermines this. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with the fundamental principles of academic honesty and fairness. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the entrance examination process above all else. This means ensuring that the study's findings are reported accurately and transparently, regardless of whether they reflect positively or negatively on the university. This aligns with the Ghifari University's regulatory framework, which emphasizes academic honesty, fair assessment, and the ethical conduct of all university operations. Specifically, the university's charter and the examination board's guidelines mandate that all assessment procedures must be unbiased and that results must be reported truthfully. Adhering to these principles protects the reputation of the university and the value of its degrees. An incorrect approach would be to selectively present data or to downplay negative findings to create a more favorable impression. This constitutes a misrepresentation of facts and a breach of ethical conduct. Such an action would violate the university's commitment to transparency and could lead to a loss of trust from prospective students, faculty, and the wider academic community. Furthermore, it would undermine the purpose of the efficiency study itself, which is to identify areas for genuine improvement. Another incorrect approach would be to halt the study or to suppress its findings altogether. This is a direct attempt to conceal information that could be crucial for institutional development. It violates the principle of accountability and demonstrates a lack of commitment to continuous improvement. The regulatory framework likely includes provisions for the responsible dissemination of research and assessment outcomes, which this approach would contravene. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to alter the examination questions or scoring criteria retroactively to align with a desired outcome. This is a severe ethical and regulatory violation, as it fundamentally compromises the validity and fairness of the assessment. It would be a direct manipulation of academic standards, eroding the credibility of the university and its admissions process. Professionals in such situations should follow a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations and regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Identifying the core ethical principles and relevant regulations. 2. Assessing the potential impact of different courses of action on stakeholders and the institution's integrity. 3. Seeking guidance from relevant authorities or ethics committees if the situation is complex or ambiguous. 4. Choosing the course of action that upholds the highest ethical standards and adheres strictly to all applicable regulations, even if it presents short-term challenges. Question 8. Strategic planning requires a thorough understanding of the Ghifari University entrance exam-specific guidelines for developing new academic programs. Which of the following best reflects the primary regulatory consideration for initiating such a plan under these guidelines? Option A. Developing a detailed financial projection for the program's first 5 years of operation. Option B. Conducting a comprehensive market analysis of global employment trends for graduates. Option C. Ensuring the proposed program aligns with the Ghifari University's stated mission and vision as outlined in its official charter. Option D. Benchmarking the proposed program against successful programs at other leading international universities. The correct answer is C. Ensuring the proposed program aligns with the Ghifari University's stated mission and vision as outlined in its official charter. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires navigating the specific regulatory framework of Ghifari University's entrance exam guidelines, which are paramount. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that any question posed strictly adheres to these guidelines, avoiding any external or generic regulatory references. The university's entrance exam regulations are the sole governing authority for this context. The correct approach involves formulating a question that directly tests a candidate's understanding of the Ghifari University entrance exam's specific requirements for strategic planning in the context of academic program development. This is justified because the exam's purpose is to assess a candidate's readiness for study at Ghifari University, which necessitates familiarity with its operational and academic planning principles as outlined in its internal regulations. The question must therefore be grounded in the university's own framework, not external academic or administrative theories. An incorrect approach would be to reference general principles of strategic planning in higher education without tying them to Ghifari University's specific guidelines. This fails because it does not assess the candidate's knowledge of the relevant jurisdiction, the Ghifari University entrance exam's regulatory framework. Another incorrect approach would be to introduce concepts from other universities' strategic planning processes, as this directly violates the strict jurisdiction compliance requirement. A third incorrect approach would be to focus on the theoretical underpinnings of strategic planning without any connection to the practical application within the Ghifari University context, rendering the question irrelevant to the exam's purpose. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a rigorous adherence to the specified jurisdiction. First, identify the precise regulatory framework governing the situation. Second, analyze the core objective of the assessment or task within that framework. Third, construct the question or response by drawing exclusively from the defined rules, laws, and guidelines. Finally, critically review the output to ensure no external or generic information has been inadvertently included, and that it directly addresses the specific requirements of the designated jurisdiction. Question 9. Upon reviewing the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations, a candidate notices a fellow applicant discreetly using a small pre-written note during the examination. According to the Ghifari University's established framework for entrance exams, what is the most appropriate course of action for the candidate observing this? Option A. Ignore the situation to avoid potential conflict or repercussions. Option B. Attempt to subtly signal to the other candidate to stop their actions. Option C. Discreetly inform the invigilator or examination supervisor about the observed incident. Option D. Make a mental note of the incident but take no further action during the exam. The correct answer is C. Discreetly inform the invigilator or examination supervisor about the observed incident. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their best work and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to succeed in a university entrance exam, especially one as critical as the Ghifari University entrance exam, can lead individuals to consider shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in upholding the principles of honesty and originality while acknowledging the competitive nature of admissions. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing pressures in a manner that aligns with the Ghifari University's established regulatory framework for academic conduct. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the Ghifari University's guidelines for the entrance exam, which unequivocally prohibit any form of academic dishonesty, including the use of unauthorized materials or assistance. This approach is right because it directly upholds the integrity of the examination process, ensuring that all candidates are assessed on their own merit and knowledge. The Ghifari University's regulatory framework, as stipulated for its entrance exams, emphasizes fairness and equal opportunity. By refusing to engage in or facilitate any form of cheating, the individual acts in accordance with these foundational principles, preventing the undermining of the university's standards and the devaluation of genuine academic achievement. An incorrect approach that involves providing or seeking unauthorized assistance, such as sharing exam content or using pre-prepared answers, represents a direct violation of the Ghifari University's academic integrity policies. This failure undermines the fairness of the exam and creates an uneven playing field for other candidates. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring clear instances of cheating observed during the exam, is also a regulatory and ethical failure. The Ghifari University's guidelines likely mandate reporting such incidents to maintain the integrity of the process. Failing to do so implicitly condones dishonest behavior and contributes to a compromised examination environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the Ghifari University's specific regulations and ethical codes governing entrance examinations. This understanding should be followed by an assessment of the situation against these established rules. When faced with a potential breach of integrity, the professional response is to act in accordance with the university's stated policies, prioritizing honesty and fairness. This may involve reporting observed misconduct or refusing to participate in any activity that compromises academic integrity. The ultimate goal is to uphold the standards and reputation of the institution. Question 10. Market research demonstrates that a significant number of applicants for the Ghifari University entrance exam are highly motivated to secure admission. During the examination, an invigilator observes an applicant discreetly using a small, pre-written note that appears to contain answers. According to the Ghifari University's entrance exam regulations, what is the most appropriate course of action for the invigilator? Option A. Discreetly inform the applicant that their actions have been observed and advise them to cease immediately. Option B. Immediately confiscate the note and disqualify the applicant from the exam. Option C. Ignore the incident to avoid disrupting the examination environment and potentially causing distress to the applicant. Option D. Document the observation and report it to the chief invigilator or the designated examination committee for further investigation according to university policy. The correct answer is B. Immediately confiscate the note and disqualify the applicant from the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the Ghifari University entrance exam's specific regulatory framework concerning academic integrity and the appropriate handling of potential misconduct. The challenge lies in identifying the correct procedure for addressing a situation where an applicant might have engaged in academic dishonesty, ensuring compliance with the university's established rules and ethical standards. A deep understanding of these regulations is crucial to maintain the fairness and credibility of the entrance examination process. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the Ghifari University's established procedures for handling suspected academic dishonesty. This typically entails reporting the observed irregularity to the designated examination authority or committee responsible for academic integrity. This approach is correct because it upholds the principles of fairness, due process, and adherence to institutional regulations. By following the prescribed reporting mechanism, the university can initiate a formal investigation, ensuring that any allegations are handled impartially and in accordance with its own policies, thereby protecting the integrity of the examination and the university's reputation. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the suspected misconduct. This is ethically and regulatorily unsound, as it fails to uphold the university's commitment to academic integrity and allows potential unfair advantages to persist, undermining the fairness of the examination for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to confront the applicant directly or to attempt to resolve the issue informally without involving the official channels. This bypasses the established regulatory framework, potentially leading to inconsistent or biased outcomes, and fails to provide the applicant with the due process guaranteed by the university's regulations. It also places the individual making the observation in a position of authority they are not officially designated to hold, creating further complications. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the relevant institutional policies and procedures. When faced with a potential violation of academic integrity, a professional should first identify the specific regulations governing such situations within the Ghifari University's framework. The next step is to meticulously document the observed facts and then report the matter through the officially designated channels, such as the Examination Board or Academic Integrity Office. This ensures that the situation is handled objectively, fairly, and in accordance with established rules, preserving the integrity of the academic process. Question 11. Operational review demonstrates a potential for inconsistencies in the scoring of essay-based questions within the Ghifari University entrance exam due to variations in examiner interpretation. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the Ghifari University's regulatory framework for maintaining examination integrity and fairness? Option A. Introduce a new, more complex scoring system based on a recently published academic paper on essay evaluation, without prior consultation with the university's examination board or pilot testing. Option B. Develop and implement standardized scoring rubrics with clear criteria and examples, and conduct mandatory calibration sessions for all examiners to ensure consistent application of these rubrics, documenting all training and updates. Option C. Instruct examiners to use their best judgment and experience to grade essays, with a directive to be lenient if they perceive an applicant's overall potential to be high, regardless of specific essay content. Option D. Reduce the weighting of essay questions in the overall exam score to minimize the impact of potential scoring variations. The correct answer is B. Develop and implement standardized scoring rubrics with clear criteria and examples, and conduct mandatory calibration sessions for all examiners to ensure consistent application of these rubrics, documenting all training and updates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between academic integrity and the university's commitment to fair and transparent admissions. The Ghifari University entrance exam regulations, as stipulated by the university's governing body, mandate a rigorous and unbiased evaluation process for all applicants. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that any operational review, while aiming for efficiency and improvement, does not inadvertently compromise the fairness or perceived legitimacy of the examination process. The university's reputation and the trust placed in its admissions decisions are at stake. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of identifying potential vulnerabilities in the examination system and proposing improvements that align with the Ghifari University's established examination protocols and ethical guidelines. This approach prioritizes maintaining the integrity of the exam by focusing on objective measures and procedural fairness. Specifically, it involves a thorough analysis of the existing examination framework, including question design, administration procedures, and scoring mechanisms, to identify areas where errors or biases might occur. Recommendations for improvement must be grounded in the university's regulatory framework, ensuring that any changes enhance, rather than undermine, the fairness and validity of the entrance exam. This aligns with the university's ethical obligation to provide equal opportunity to all applicants and uphold the credibility of its academic standards. An incorrect approach would be to implement changes based on anecdotal evidence or personal opinions without a systematic review aligned with the university's regulations. For instance, arbitrarily altering the difficulty of questions for certain applicant groups would be a direct violation of the principle of equal treatment and could lead to accusations of bias, undermining the fairness of the examination. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on external, unverified sources for proposed changes without cross-referencing them with the Ghifari University-specific examination guidelines. This could introduce external biases or irrelevant standards, failing to address the unique requirements and context of the university's admissions process. Furthermore, making significant procedural changes without proper consultation and documentation, as required by university policy, would be a regulatory failure, potentially leading to inconsistencies and challenges to the validity of the exam results. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a commitment to adherence to the Ghifari University's regulatory framework and ethical principles. This involves a structured approach. First, understanding the specific regulations governing the entrance exam. Second, conducting a comprehensive and objective assessment of the current operational processes. Third, identifying potential risks and areas for improvement based on this assessment. And finally, proposing solutions that are not only effective, but also fully compliant with the university's established rules and ethical standards. Transparency and documentation throughout the process are crucial to ensure accountability and maintain trust. Question 12. Examination of the data shows that a prospective student for the Ghifari University entrance exam has submitted an essay that, upon review, exhibits a sophisticated structure and vocabulary consistent with advanced AI-generated content. The student claims the essay represents their personal effort in understanding the prompt. The university's entrance exam regulations state that all submitted work must be the applicant's original creation, with no explicit mention of AI-generated content or specific prohibitions against its use. However, a core principle of the Ghifari University's academic charter emphasizes the development of critical thinking and independent intellectual contribution. Considering only the Ghifari University entrance exam's regulatory framework and academic charter, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Immediately disqualify the student from the entrance exam due to the high likelihood of academic misconduct based on the essay's AI-like characteristics. Option B. Accept the essay as submitted, assuming the student's claim of personal effort satisfies the original creation requirement, as there is no explicit prohibition against AI use in the exam regulations. Option C. Initiate a formal review process to determine if the essay's content and creation method align with the university's principles of academic integrity and the definition of original creation within the exam regulations, potentially involving a request for further clarification or evidence from the student. Option D. Consult general academic integrity guidelines from international educational bodies to assess the essay's originality and the student's adherence to ethical standards. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal review process to determine if the essay's content and creation method align with the university's principles of academic integrity and the definition of original creation within the exam regulations, potentially involving a request for further clarification or evidence from the student. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the potential for a student to exploit a loophole in the examination process. The pressure to admit students, coupled with the need to maintain the credibility of the entrance exam, requires careful judgment. The core issue revolves around interpreting and applying the examination's regulatory framework to a novel situation. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations concerning the submission of supporting documents and the definition of originality for submitted work. This approach prioritizes adherence to the spirit and letter of the regulations, ensuring fairness to all applicants and upholding the integrity of the admission process. Specifically, if the regulations define originality as work solely produced by the applicant without external assistance beyond standard academic resources, then submitting a heavily AI-generated essay, even if paraphrased, would likely violate these provisions. The university's commitment to academic integrity, as outlined in its foundational documents and exam guidelines, would necessitate an investigation into the student's submission. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the student's application based on suspicion alone, without a formal review process. This fails to uphold due process and could lead to an unfair outcome. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the essay without further scrutiny, assuming the student's claim of personal effort is sufficient. This ignores the potential for academic misconduct and undermines the university's commitment to fair evaluation. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to consult external, non-university specific guidelines on AI use in academic work. This violates the strict jurisdiction requirement of adhering only to the Ghifari University entrance exams regulatory framework. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific rules and regulations governing the situation. This involves identifying any ambiguities or potential conflicts within the existing framework. Next, they should gather all relevant facts and evidence. Then, they must apply the established rules to the facts, considering the intent behind the regulations. If the situation is novel or complex, seeking clarification from the appropriate authority within the university's governance structure is crucial. The decision should be documented, and any actions taken should be consistent with the established regulatory framework and ethical principles of fairness and academic integrity. Question 13. Assessment of the appropriate procedure for an invigilator at the Ghifari University entrance exam to follow upon observing a candidate exhibiting behavior that strongly suggests they are attempting to cheat, in strict adherence to Ghifari University's examination regulations. Option A. Immediately and discreetly inform the candidate that their behavior has been noted and instruct them to cease, while also making a detailed written report to the examination board after the exam. Option B. Publicly announce to the entire examination hall that cheating is not tolerated and that any observed instances will result in immediate disqualification. Option C. Discreetly document the observed behavior and immediately report it to the chief invigilator or designated examination authority, as per Ghifari University's established protocol for handling exam irregularities. Option D. Continue to observe the candidate without taking any immediate action or making a report, assuming the behavior might be a misunderstanding. Correct answer is A. Immediately and discreetly inform the candidate that their behavior has been noted and instruct them to cease, while also making a detailed written report to the examination board after the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the application of university regulations during the Ghifari University entrance exam. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold the exam's integrity with the ethical obligation to address potential misconduct fairly and transparently, adhering strictly to the Ghifari University's established framework. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any action taken is consistent with the university's stated policies on academic honesty and examination procedures, avoiding assumptions or external influences. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of reporting the observed irregularity to the designated examination authority within Ghifari University, as per the university's examination regulations. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the principle of procedural fairness and the established chain of command for handling exam misconduct. By reporting the incident to the appropriate body, the candidate's actions are guided by the university's own regulatory framework, ensuring that any investigation or decision is made by those empowered to do so under the university's rules. This upholds the integrity of the examination process and provides a clear pathway for resolution according to the university's established procedures. An incorrect approach of directly confronting the candidate during the exam is professionally unacceptable. This action bypasses the established reporting mechanisms and could lead to a disruption of the examination environment for other candidates, potentially violating the university's guidelines on maintaining exam order. Furthermore, it places the observer in a position of judgment and enforcement that may not be authorized by the university's regulations, risking an unfair or improperly handled situation. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the observed behavior is also professionally unacceptable. This failure to act undermines the principle of academic integrity that Ghifari University's entrance exam is designed to uphold. By not reporting a potential violation, the observer implicitly condones such behavior, which is contrary to the ethical responsibilities of maintaining a fair and honest examination environment as stipulated by university regulations. A third incorrect approach of discussing the observation with other candidates during the exam is similarly professionally unacceptable. This action constitutes a breach of confidentiality and can create an atmosphere of suspicion and anxiety among other students, disrupting their focus and potentially violating the university's rules on candidate conduct and communication during examinations. It also risks spreading unsubstantiated information and prejudicing the outcome of any potential investigation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the Ghifari University's examination regulations and code of conduct. When an irregularity is observed, the first step is to identify the specific university policy that governs such situations. The professional should then follow the prescribed reporting procedure, which typically involves documenting the observation and submitting it to the designated authority, e.g., the chief invigilator or examination board, without taking direct action that could compromise the exam or violate university rules. This ensures that the situation is handled impartially, according to established procedures, and with due respect for the rights of all involved. Question 14. Which approach would be most appropriate for an invigilator at the Ghifari University entrance exam when a candidate requests to use a personal, non-approved electronic device for note-taking during a non-mathematical section of the exam, citing a need for better organization? Option A. Advise the candidate to wait until after the examination to organize their notes and suggest they speak to the admissions office about future organizational tools. Option B. Politely inform the candidate that the use of any personal electronic devices is strictly prohibited during the examination, as per Ghifari University entrance exam regulations, and offer to provide scratch paper if available. Option C. Consult with a fellow invigilator to gauge their opinion on whether such a request could be accommodated on a case-by-case basis. Option D. Allow the candidate to use the device for note-taking, but instruct them to keep it turned off and only use it for writing, ensuring it is not connected to any network. Correct answer is B. Politely inform the candidate that the use of any personal electronic devices is strictly prohibited during the examination, as per Ghifari University entrance exam regulations, and offer to provide scratch paper if available. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the application of Ghifari University's entrance examination regulations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold the integrity of the examination process with the ethical obligation to treat all candidates fairly and with respect, while strictly adhering to the university's specific guidelines. The candidate's request, while seemingly minor, could be interpreted as an attempt to gain an unfair advantage or to circumvent established procedures, necessitating a careful and compliant response. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and strict application of Ghifari University's entrance examination regulations concerning candidate requests and the handling of potential irregularities. This approach prioritizes adherence to the established framework, ensuring fairness and consistency for all applicants. Specifically, it requires consulting the official examination handbook or relevant university policy to determine the permissible actions for such a request. If the regulations do not explicitly permit the candidate's request, or if it falls outside the defined scope of acceptable accommodations, the correct response is to politely and clearly explain the limitations based on the university's rules. This upholds the principle of equal treatment and prevents the introduction of subjective decision-making that could compromise the examination's validity. An incorrect approach would be to grant the request without verifying its compliance with university regulations. This failure to adhere to the established framework introduces an element of arbitrariness and could be seen as preferential treatment, thereby undermining the fairness and integrity of the entrance examination. It also bypasses the established channels for addressing candidate needs or concerns, potentially setting a precedent for future non-compliant requests. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the candidate's request outright without proper consideration or reference to the university's guidelines. While maintaining order is important, a complete disregard for a candidate's query, especially if it stems from a misunderstanding or a genuine need for clarification, can be perceived as unprofessional and lacking in empathy. This approach fails to uphold the university's commitment to a fair and transparent admissions process, even if the request itself is ultimately not permissible. A third incorrect approach would be to seek external advice or consult with colleagues without first referencing the specific Ghifari University entrance examination regulations. While collaboration can be beneficial, the primary source of authority for exam procedures and candidate handling must be the university's own documented rules. Relying on general best practices or opinions from outside the defined jurisdiction of the Ghifari University entrance exam would violate the principle of strict regulatory compliance mandated for this specific examination. The professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with an immediate reference to the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations. This involves identifying the specific section pertaining to candidate requests, special accommodations, or examination conduct. If the request is clearly within the permitted scope, it should be handled accordingly. If it is ambiguous or outside the defined scope, the regulations should be consulted to determine the appropriate course of action, which may involve seeking clarification from the examination board or admissions office according to established university procedures. The decision must be grounded in the explicit rules, ensuring fairness, consistency, and the integrity of the examination process. Question 15. Implementation of the Ghifari University entrance exams application review process requires careful consideration of applicant documentation. If an applicant submits an application with a clearly missing mandatory supporting document, what is the most appropriate course of action according to the Ghifari University entrance exams regulatory framework for admissions? Option A. Proceed with the application review, making assumptions about the missing document's content to expedite the process. Option B. Contact the applicant to request the missing mandatory supporting document, adhering to the established communication protocols outlined in the Ghifari University entrance exams guidelines. Option C. Forward the application to a senior admissions officer for an ad hoc decision, bypassing standard review procedures. Option D. Immediately reject the application due to the incomplete submission, without further communication. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the application review, making assumptions about the missing document's content to expedite the process. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student applications, particularly when dealing with potentially incomplete or misleading information. The core professional challenge lies in adhering strictly to the Ghifari University entrance exams established regulatory framework and guidelines for application processing, ensuring fairness and preventing any undue advantage or disadvantage to applicants. This requires a meticulous and unbiased approach to evaluating each application against the defined criteria. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's submitted document against the explicit requirements outlined in the Ghifari University entrance exams official application guidelines. This means verifying the completeness and authenticity of all submitted materials, including academic transcripts and any supporting documentation. If discrepancies or missing information are identified, the established procedure for requesting clarification or additional documentation from the applicant must be followed. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it upholds the principle of equal opportunity by treating all applicants according to the same set of rules and standards. It directly aligns with the Ghifari University entrance exams commitment to a fair and transparent admissions process, minimizing the risk of arbitrary decisions or favoritism. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking the missing documentation and proceeding with the application evaluation would be a direct violation of the Ghifari University entrance exams application processing regulations. Its failure to adhere to established procedures undermines the integrity of the admissions process and could lead to an unfair assessment of the applicant's qualifications. Another incorrect approach, such as immediately rejecting the application without attempting to obtain the missing information, might also be problematic if the guidelines allow for a grace period or a process for applicants to rectify omissions. This would fail to provide the applicant with a reasonable opportunity to comply with the requirements, potentially leading to an unjust outcome. A third incorrect approach, such as making assumptions about the applicant's qualifications based on incomplete data, is fundamentally flawed as it introduces subjectivity and bias into the evaluation process, contradicting the Ghifari University entrance exam's emphasis on objective assessment. The professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a clear understanding of the Ghifari University entrance exam's specific application guidelines and admission policies. Professionals must then meticulously compare the applicant's submission against these documented requirements. If any deviation or omission is found, the next step is to consult the established protocols for handling such issues, which typically involve seeking clarification or requesting missing documents within a defined timeframe. This systematic and rule-based approach ensures that decisions are defensible, consistent, and aligned with the university's regulatory obligations and ethical commitments. Question 16. Operational review demonstrates that the Ghifari University Entrance Exam Admissions Committee is considering an applicant who completed their prior academic studies at an institution not explicitly listed in the university's standard equivalency charts. The committee is unsure how to evaluate the applicant's qualifications in light of the Ghifari University Entrance Exam's regulatory framework for admissions. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with the Ghifari University Entrance Exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Rely on general principles of academic equivalency commonly accepted in higher education, without specific reference to the Ghifari University Entrance Exam's directives. Option B. Seek informal advice from faculty members who have previously encountered similar situations to gauge a consensus on how to proceed. Option C. Directly consult the official Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations and any supplementary guidelines pertaining to the assessment of foreign or non-standard academic qualifications to determine the correct procedure. Option D. Proceed with admitting the student based on the perceived academic rigor of their previous institution, assuming it aligns with Ghifari University standards. The correct answer is C. Directly consult the official Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations and any supplementary guidelines pertaining to the assessment of foreign or non-standard academic qualifications to determine the correct procedure. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions under potentially ambiguous or evolving regulatory interpretations. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the admissions process, as documented and implemented, strictly adheres to the Ghifari University Entrance Exam's regulatory framework, which is the sole governing authority for this context. Misinterpreting or circumventing these regulations can lead to significant ethical breaches and procedural invalidity. The correct approach involves a meticulous review of the Ghifari University Entrance Exam-specific regulations concerning the admission of students with prior academic records. This approach is right because it prioritizes direct compliance with the established legal and procedural framework. By consulting the official Ghifari University Entrance Exam guidelines, the admissions committee ensures that any decision made is grounded in the explicit rules and requirements set forth by the governing body. This proactive verification prevents any deviation from the mandated procedures, upholding the integrity of the entrance examination and the university's admission standards. It demonstrates a commitment to regulatory adherence and due process. An incorrect approach would be to rely on informal understandings or past practices that are not explicitly codified within the Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations. This is a regulatory failure because it bypasses the official rulebook, potentially leading to inconsistent or unfair application of admission criteria. Another incorrect approach would be to seek external advice from sources not authorized by the Ghifari University Entrance Exam framework. This is an ethical and regulatory failure as it introduces external, potentially irrelevant or conflicting standards and undermines the authority of the specified regulatory body. Furthermore, making a decision based on the perceived difficulty of the student's previous institution, without explicit regulatory guidance from the Ghifari University Entrance Exam, is a significant procedural and ethical lapse. It introduces subjective judgment where objective, regulation-based criteria are required, risking bias and noncompliance. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making process that begins with identifying the specific regulatory framework governing the situation in this case, the Ghifari University entrance exams rules. They must then locate and thoroughly understand the relevant clauses pertaining to the issue at hand. If ambiguity exists, the next step is to seek clarification directly from the authoritative source or designated compliance officers within the Ghifari University entrance exam structure. Decisions must always be documented and justifiable based on these official regulations. Question 17. During the evaluation of a candidate for the Ghifari University entrance exam, the admissions committee discovers that the candidate's scores on a critical section of the exam are below the minimum threshold stipulated in the official examination guidelines. However, a senior faculty member, who is aware of the candidate's promising extracurricular achievements and potential future contributions, strongly advocates for the candidate's admission, suggesting a flexible interpretation of the scoring criteria. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee to ensure compliance with the Ghifari University entrance exams regulatory framework? Option A. Postpone the decision indefinitely to allow for further informal discussions and a potential re-evaluation of the candidate's overall profile outside the established exam parameters. Option B. Grant admission to the candidate by adjusting the scoring rubric to accommodate their extracurricular achievements, as suggested by the senior faculty member, to recognize their potential. Option C. Strictly adhere to the minimum score threshold as outlined in the Ghifari University entrance exam guidelines, and inform the candidate of the outcome based on these objective criteria. Option D. Recommend the candidate for a special review process that is not formally defined within the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations, based on the faculty member's recommendation. The correct answer is C. Strictly adhere to the minimum score threshold as outlined in the Ghifari University entrance exam guidelines, and inform the candidate of the outcome based on these objective criteria. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the pressure to admit a candidate who may not fully meet the established criteria. The entrance exam process, as governed by Ghifari University's regulatory framework, is designed to ensure a fair and objective selection of qualified students. Deviating from these established procedures, even with good intentions, can undermine the credibility of the entire admissions process and create a precedent for future noncompliance. The correct approach involves a rigorous adherence to the Ghifari University entrance exam regulation. This means ensuring that all candidates, regardless of their background or any perceived potential, are evaluated strictly against the published academic standards and assessment criteria. The regulatory framework for the Ghifari University entrance exam mandates transparency and fairness in admissions, requiring that decisions be based solely on objective performance metrics and established eligibility requirements. Upholding these regulations is paramount to maintaining the integrity of the university's academic standards and ensuring equal opportunity for all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to bypass or significantly alter the standard evaluation process based on external influence or a subjective assessment of the candidate's potential. This could involve overlooking specific academic deficiencies or applying a less stringent interpretation of the exam scoring rubric. Such actions would violate the Ghifari University entrance exam regulations by introducing bias and compromising the objectivity of the admissions process. Furthermore, it could lead to the admission of students who are not adequately prepared for the rigors of university-level study, potentially impacting their academic success and the overall academic standing of the institution. Another incorrect approach would be to delay the decision indefinitely without a clear, documented, and procedurally sound reason, which would also contravene the exam's guidelines for timely and transparent evaluation. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This involves clearly understanding the Ghifari University entrance exam's procedural requirements, documenting all evaluation steps, and seeking clarification or approval from the appropriate university authorities if any ambiguity arises regarding the application of the rules. The focus should always be on objective assessment and fair treatment of all candidates, ensuring that any decision made is defensible under the university's regulatory framework. Question 18. Operational review demonstrates that a student applicant has raised a concern regarding the perceived bias of certain questions in the Ghifari University entrance exam, suggesting they favor a specific interpretation not explicitly covered in the official syllabus. According to Ghifari University's academic regulations and examination guidelines, what is the most appropriate initial step to address this concern? Option A. Dismiss the complaint as an isolated incident and proceed with the scheduled examination administration. Option B. Immediately revise the exam questions to remove any potentially controversial elements and reissue the exam. Option C. Seek informal opinions from external academics not affiliated with Ghifari University to gauge the validity of the complaint. Option D. Conduct a formal, objective review of the exam content by an independent committee of university faculty against the established curriculum and learning objectives. Correct answer is B. Immediately revise the exam questions to remove any potentially controversial elements and reissue the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining academic integrity and responding to potential external pressures or perceived biases. The Ghifari University entrance exam's regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines are paramount. The challenge lies in ensuring that the exam content and its administration are fair, objective, and free from any undue influence that could compromise the validity of the assessment process. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's standards and the principles of equitable evaluation. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and evidence-based review of the exam content against the established curriculum and learning objectives, as defined by Ghifari University's academic regulations. This process must be conducted by an independent committee, adhering strictly to the university's internal quality assurance policies for examination development. The justification for this approach is rooted in the university's commitment to academic rigor and fairness, ensuring that all candidates are assessed on the same, relevant material. This aligns with the core principles of educational assessment, which demand that examinations accurately reflect the knowledge and skills students are expected to possess, as outlined in the official syllabus and course descriptions. An incorrect approach would be to immediately revise the exam based on a single complaint without a formal, objective review. This fails to uphold the university's established procedures for curriculum validation and exam quality control. Such a hasty revision could introduce new biases or inaccuracies, potentially disadvantaging other candidates. It also undermines the authority of the examination board and the established academic standards. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the complaint outright without any investigation. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the university's commitment to addressing student concerns. It could lead to perceptions of unfairness and a failure to identify genuine issues that might exist within the exam, thereby compromising the integrity of the entrance process. A further incorrect approach would be to consult external, non-university affiliated individuals for an opinion on the exam's content, without following the university's established protocols for external review or expert consultation. This bypasses the internal governance structures designed to ensure objectivity and adherence to the specific Ghifari University academic framework, potentially introducing external biases or misinterpretations of the intended learning outcomes. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Acknowledging the complaint and initiating a formal review process as per university policy. 2. Assembling an independent committee, composed of faculty members with expertise in the relevant subject matter and familiar with the university's curriculum, to conduct an objective assessment of the exam content. 3. Ensuring the review committee strictly adheres to Ghifari University's guidelines for examination content validation, comparing the exam questions against the official syllabus and learning objectives. 4. Documenting all findings and recommendations thoroughly. 5. Communicating the outcome of the review transparently and in accordance with university communication protocols. Question 19. Performance analysis shows that a candidate's family has strong ties to the administration of Ghifari University and is inquiring about ways to ensure a favorable outcome in the upcoming entrance examination, beyond the standard application process. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and ethically compliant response from the perspective of upholding the integrity of the Ghifari University entrance exam? Option A suggests that the family explore opportunities for significant financial donations to the university, as this might be viewed favorably during the admission process. Option B recommends seeking a personal meeting with a senior university official to discuss the candidate's potential and advocate for special consideration due to the family's long-standing relationship with the institution. Option C advise the family to highlight the candidate's extracurricular achievements and personal qualities extensively in a separate appeal, hoping it might sway the admissions committee outside the formal exam evaluation. Option D emphasize that all applicants are evaluated strictly based on their performance in the Ghifari University entrance exam and their academic qualifications, as per the university's published admission criteria, and that no external factors can influence the outcome. The correct answer is D. Emphasize that all applicants are evaluated strictly based on their performance in the Ghifari University entrance exam and their academic qualifications, as per the university's published admission criteria, and that no external factors can influence the outcome. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of university admissions at Ghifari University, specifically concerning fairness and transparency in the selection process. The challenge lies in balancing the university's need to admit qualified students with the imperative to avoid any perception or reality of undue influence or preferential treatment, which could undermine the integrity of the entrance examination. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves acknowledging the university's established admission criteria and the importance of adhering to them strictly. This demonstrates an understanding that the Ghifari University entrance exam is designed to be a standardized and objective measure of a candidate's suitability. By emphasizing the need for all applicants to be evaluated solely on their performance in the exam and their academic qualifications, as per the official guidelines, this approach upholds the regulatory framework of the university's admission process, ensuring fairness and preventing any form of bias or external pressure from influencing the outcome. This aligns with the ethical obligation to maintain the credibility and integrity of the academic institution. Correct approach is analysis. An approach that suggests leveraging personal connections or offering additional contributions beyond the stipulated application requirements to influence the admission decision is ethically unsound and violates the principles of fair competition. This would undermine the validity of the entrance examination and create an uneven playing field, directly contravening the spirit and likely the letter of Ghifari University's admission regulations, which are designed to ensure merit-based selection. An approach that proposes seeking preferential treatment or special considerations outside the defined admission process, even if framed as a way to support a candidate, is also problematic. This circumvents the established procedures and could be interpreted as an attempt to bypass objective evaluation. Such actions could lead to accusations of favoritism and damage the reputation of the university and its admission system. It fails to respect the regulatory framework that governs how all applicants are to be assessed. An approach that focuses on the financial capacity of the applicant as a primary factor for admission, rather than academic merit as determined by the entrance exam, is a misinterpretation of the university's objectives. While financial stability might be a consideration in some aspects of university operations, it should not supersede the core requirement of academic qualification for entrance. This approach disregards the regulatory framework that prioritizes academic performance for admission to Ghifari University. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions, or those seeking admission, must operate within a clear framework of rules and ethical guidelines. The decision-making process should begin with a thorough understanding of the governing regulations and policies. When faced with a situation involving potential influence or perceived unfairness, the professional should always default to the established procedures and criteria. If there are ambiguities or concerns about the process, the appropriate course of action is to seek clarification from the relevant authorities or to report potential irregularities through official channels, rather than attempting to manipulate the system. Upholding integrity, fairness, and transparency are paramount. Question 20. Operational review demonstrates that the Ghifari University Entrance Exam Admissions Committee is facing pressure to meet its annual enrollment quota. During the review of applicant files, a candidate presents academic transcripts that appear to have minor inconsistencies in the grading scale compared to the standard Ghifari University system, though their overall academic performance is strong. The committee is considering admitting this candidate to help meet the enrollment target, but is unsure of the proper procedure according to the Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Seek an informal opinion from a senior faculty member outside the admissions committee on whether to overlook the inconsistencies to meet the enrollment target. Option B. Reject the candidate due to the inconsistencies in their academic transcripts, as any deviation from the standard requirements could jeopardize the integrity of the admissions process. Option C. Thoroughly investigate the candidate's academic transcripts to determine if they meet the eligibility criteria as defined by the Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations, and if any discrepancies can be reconciled through official documentation or clarification from the issuing institution before making a decision. Option D. Admit the candidate to help meet the enrollment target, assuming the minor inconsistencies are acceptable given their strong overall performance and the need to fulfill the quota. The correct answer is C. Thoroughly investigate the candidate's academic transcripts to determine if they meet the eligibility criteria as defined by the Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations, and if any discrepancies can be reconciled through official documentation or clarification from the issuing institution before making a decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the pressure to meet enrollment targets. The admissions committee must navigate this tension while adhering strictly to the Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying the exam's rules regarding candidate eligibility and the process for handling potential irregularities, ensuring fairness and upholding the university's standards without succumbing to external pressures. The correct approach involves a meticulous review of each applicant's documentation against the explicit criteria outlined in the Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations. This means verifying that all submitted credentials, including academic records and any required supporting documents, meet the stipulated standards for eligibility. Furthermore, it requires a thorough investigation of any discrepancies or potential misrepresentations, following the established procedures for addressing such issues as defined by the exam's framework. This adherence to documented procedures and eligibility criteria is paramount for maintaining the integrity of the admissions process and ensuring that all candidates are evaluated on a level playing field, as mandated by the Ghifari University Entrance Exam's commitment to meritocracy and fair assessment. An incorrect approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets over strict adherence to eligibility criteria would represent a significant regulatory failure. This would undermine the fairness of the admissions process and could lead to the enrollment of unqualified candidates, thereby compromising the academic standards of Ghifari University. Another incorrect approach, which involves overlooking minor discrepancies in documentation without a clear procedural basis within the exam regulations, risks setting a precedent for laxity and could be perceived as favoritism, thereby violating the principle of equal treatment for all applicants. A third incorrect approach, which involves making arbitrary decisions about eligibility without referencing the specific guidelines of the Ghifari University Entrance Exam, is a direct contravention of the regulatory framework and introduces subjectivity where objectivity is required. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the Ghifari University Entrance Exam regulations. This involves identifying the specific rules governing candidate eligibility, documentation requirements, and the process for handling exceptions or irregularities. The next step is to objectively assess each applicant's case against these regulations. If any doubt or discrepancy arises, the professional should consult the relevant sections of the regulations and, if necessary, seek clarification from the designated examination authority within Ghifari University. The decision-making process must be documented, ensuring transparency and accountability, and should always prioritize adherence to the established regulatory framework over external pressures or subjective judgments.